This is the 868. Throughout my professional life, I've been often called and told, I saw you there or here. And I often chuckled and said, it's not me. But people never understood. And so I am fortunate in this episode of the 868 to have my twin. Not my biological twin, but folks often take Ryan for me and me for Ryan. And we endeavor through similar professional settings. So it's very interesting when it was rather actually serendipitous when he came up to me and said, I'm your twin. Folks, welcome, Brother Roper.
Thank you very much. It does happen quite often, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it does happen. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be here on this show.
Well, we're talking about backgrounds. And yours, like mine, I did intonate it, is very colorful because you've gone through the world of professional energy settings for years. You're back home in your own business. You do volunteerism quite a bit. I've seen you quite a bit in many of those trade settings, TIC settings, the things that drive our economy. So, but let's go back. I want to go back because as we don't get the twins to come together often. Is CIC?
Fatima.
Close.
Yeah.
Similar schools.
Yeah.
So you went to Fatima.
Yeah.
You got a good education. What drove you? Where did you go to university?
Right. So I'll tell you the story. The story is I would say it's quite unique. I went to Newtown first, Newtown Boys, then Fatima College, a lot of boys' schools here. And my uncle and aunt were in the oil and gas business. So they lived in Siparia every July, August.
I would say Siparia.
Siparia, yes. And so every July, August holidays, I would go down to Siparia and spend time with them, and even at beach camp, which used to be Trinidad at the time. And so I gained that experience working and seeing the oil and gas business, and it was there that I said, you know what, I am going to become an engineer in this oil and gas field. I was about 11 or 12, and that's how I decided to become an engineer. And then at Fatima was really a wholesome place where it really helped me to connect dots, really to learn how to speak, learn how to connect with people, and of course, go after academics. So it was really good. And think about sports. I played a lot of sports in Fatima. I played cricket, hockey, and one other, football. Wasn't the best footballer, but very good at cricket, very good at hockey.
But you still did it.
But still did it. And so the art of teamwork and understanding how to work together, and still with that drive to become an engineer, was really strong from those Fatima days. And then I decided to do, at that time, SATs was a big thing. I really look at teenagers today and I wonder, hey, if I had the exposure, the opportunities that these folks have, millennials, and I would have been so much further. But regardless.
You think so, Mike?
Yeah.
I think their chips are born. From the time they're born now, you're seeing them walking from 6 months. Yeah. You're seeing them, when you're speaking, they're looking articulately at you.
Yes.
So I think they're more competitive. I often tell my children, it's no longer a sport and a musical instrument to excel in a university setting. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm on the other side of the fence with you with that one.
Well, what I'm saying is a lot of them are sitting down and not doing the things. I had to go every day and read a book on how to do the SATs. And there was a book, the SAT book, and I would have to practice. And then I did very well at that SATs. That's what I was able to get a scholarship. I went away. I did Morehouse College and Georgia Tech, two schools in Atlanta. So my parents put me on a plane. They didn't even come with me. They said, send me off with about a few $100 US in my pocket, and that had to last. So I learned there in Atlanta to live by yourself, to work, get academically strong, as well as pay your way through school. And so that's how I got through Morehouse and Georgia Tech. And it was good, Morehouse, because there were a lot of trainees in that year. And so
a lot of your Fatima comrades too.
Aunt St. Mary's, Fatima, Aunt St. Mary's, so a lot of folks were in Atlanta during that time. So it was a good stepping stone to get into the States. and from there I went to Georgia Tech. I was lucky to then work for BP, and I worked for BP. I've worked for BP for a long time. Since during school, every year, during what do you call the summer in the States, and they sent me all over the place. BP had been really good for me. I ended up then working for them for more than 20 years. And so with them, I was able to go all over the world and live all over the world: Alaska, England, Azerbaijan, China, England, a lot of places. And that experience, again, moved me from becoming just an engineer, no, not, I wouldn't say just, but focused, heavily mindset of an engineer. And we don't have a good reputation, engineers. We sit in the background.
Well, I want to talk about that before we talk about where you are now.
Okay, let me just finish that off. So then from there, I've decided, so you see that large companies, oil and gas, they want to make the change, and everybody recognizes that we have to move from oil and gas to renewables. But it's very difficult when we move back to the status quo, when there are wars. And these companies, large companies, have to report back to their shareholders. So it's difficult. So what I've decided is to now leave these companies, no malice, and start my own company to further the agenda towards the energy transformation.
Before we go to your company
Yeah.
and your newest accomplishment,
Yeah.
help the watchers, the viewers, understand what an engineer is.
Right.
All these times, the parents were talking about engineering is the way of the future, engineering is the wave of the future. What is an engineer?
An engineer is somebody who has a propensity to understand pain points that people face and try to solve them. That's essentially what an engineer is. And you can be an engineer in any facet, really. There's computer engineers, there's civil engineers. Like me, I'm a chemical engineer or process engineer. And of course, there are mechanical, all facets, right? And again, what an engineer does is you see something that's a problem, you see something that people are facing challenges with, and you have that innate desire. If you have kids, for example, boys or girls who are willing to break apart a radio and try to put it back together, that child has an engineering mindset. That child has this propensity towards engineering. And that's what we are. Like I was about to say, we have a bad rep in that sometimes engineers are so focused on solving the problems that they forget about the people. So it's really the job of engineers, young engineers especially, to learn how to interact with people as well as solve the problems.
And the truth is, we have a lot of engineers, we have a lot of lawyers. In all the Caribbean diaspora points, and indeed in the Caribbean. And so what becomes the next wave as we're looking at AI?
Oh, fantastic question. So I think people are starting to have the conversation about how relevant this mode of schooling or education is for the future. And what I always say is, and what people used to think is that low-level jobs would go away because of AI. But it's proving time and more so now that it's actually coding that's going away first. It's actually white-collar jobs that are going to go away first. So I always say, learn how to do things with your hands. We in Trinidad and Tobago used to have John Donaldson Technical Institute, and we've moved away from these practical schools towards theory, and I believe that it's now going to go back to TechVoc, the MICs of the world, the NESCs, where you have to learn how to do things with your hands, because the computers are going to do everything else.
Well, I want to tell you, the pandemic gave me a rude lesson. While we were all in our homes,
Yeah,
it showed you who were really essential and who weren't.
that's right.
And the plumbers and the electricians and the air condition technicians, they were the ones who got to really continue their craft and earn a living. And so all who are watching, I hope you're listening and understanding as two contemporaries discuss very relevant topics near and dear to you. So coming back now, after you gave BP the 20 years,
Yeah,
I think you've now gone into the green space.
right.
Tell us about your endeavors here.
So really, it's the expansion of a family business. Consulting Engineers Associates Limited has been around for 30 years. The principal engineer, Vaughan Lazama, a lot of civil engineer, structural work, etc. I'm expanding that now to include resilient engineering, sustainable energy, looking at the first thing that we need to look at is energy efficiency. So people talk about renewables a lot, but there's a lot of work to be done first in how we utilize our AC units, how we leave our lights on all the time. So implementation of simple things like sensors, because we don't want to turn off the remotes, we don't want to turn off the ACs, these things. Simple energy efficiency innovations can help us to reduce our electricity bills. In Trinidad and Tobago, at the moment, we have what people call cheap electricity, but it's not cheap because somebody's paying it. It may not be you out of your pocket, but it's you out of your taxes. In Trinidad and Tobago, there's a relatively small amount of the population that actually pays taxes. So the burden is on these people to pay these bills, all of these subsidies. And yes, it's what's the word? It's something that we earned as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, this right to have these subsidies afforded to us, but we're finding more and more that we can't afford it. So these subsidies are likely to start being eroded or removed, and therefore we have to really think about energy efficiency as individuals.
You know, you touched something that really troubled me for a very long time. You're in the US, you see solar panels on roofs. You come Jamaica straight down to St. Lucia, where water is scarce, they create water wells below the homes, treatment, water collection. Things we used to see from our grandparents have now eroded and gone. And you ask yourself, what is happening in Trinidad and Tobago that we are not, like we missed the bus?
Yeah.
And you often wonder, even I remember in renovation or building of homes here, I contemplated going solar.
Yes.
And then when you hit the bill, you say, my goodness, how could this even make sense? Then you ask yourself, well, why isn't the ministry giving you a subsidy, especially if your home is in a business or your business is in a business? Why aren't there subsidies towards this end so that you could make it back in a later time? Yeah. Why aren't we being proactive? Why are we always reactive? Continues to be my quintessential question as we try to grapple with all these realities. Yeah. And you're coming with simple solutions. I mean, I dare say my children always leave on the lights. Yeah. So I'm programmed now around 1, 2 o'clock. When you get up, you know, the older we get, we have to take a bathroom break. Yeah. When you wake up, the body is telling you things. And you have to then do a sweep through the house to see if the lights are on, if they took off the air conditions, if they indeed dealt with closing the doors, as simple as that, to contain the air. And you ask yourself, are we failing them too? So I've asked you 2 questions in a nutshell there.
Yes.
And so I'm waiting to hear what you have to say on the matter.
Well, right. So in terms of Trinidad and Tobago, having access to oil and gas can be a blessing, but also a curse. And we call it the Dutch disease many times. It's because the population of the country gets, the right word to use, they get lackadaisical, complacent in terms of energy costs and what the wastage means in terms of dollars and cents. When you go to Barbados, when you go to Jamaica, you're talking about 5 times the cost of electricity that we pay and more. 50 cents a kilowatt hour versus what we pay 5 cents a kilowatt hour. And that influences behaviors. So to your point about failing the children or failing the next generation, it's a lack of awareness because we as adults we're not feeling the pressure of it, as do our neighbors in Jamaica, Barbados, Cayman Islands.
You think we really not feel any pressures, or we have lost ourselves? I remember when we were growing up, there was a Charlie campaign.
Oh my gosh. You hit the nail on the I love that so much. We need to get back to it. And nowadays you see people throwing KFC boxes out the window.
And that irks my children more than anything.
Right.
So the question is, how can, you see, I think as Caribbean people, we look at these things and we feel the government must help us with all things. And we've reached a point where the government could only do so much. Yeah. And we have to do our parts. And so I'm happy to hear you're doing it. I know I have a friend named, it's Mr. Cuffy's daughter, my scoutmaster from Rosary,
Okay.
Sian Cuffy.
Oh, yeah.
She's also in your world.
Waste management she does, yes.
And so I'm happy to see some of us have gravitated into the saving the world, wearing your invisible capes, because that's what you all are doing. Now the question is, does it translate and does it make a difference?
Right. So CEAL Green, this is why I have created CEAL Green. It's in order to address what we call this implementation gap. Everybody, I think, knows that we need to move, just like you, into this energy transformation towards renewable energy, but you don't know where to start. You don't know where the costs can be beneficial to you, and that's what we're doing, right? Helping people understand where the return is for you, and working with now, especially the global south, places like Trinidad and Tobago are receiving a lot of funding in order to move the dial on energy transformation. And accessing that, again, not just through government, through the IDBs, through green funds that are existent all around the Caribbean, because the money is in fact there. It's just we have unlearned so much as a people, not just Trinidad and Tobago, as human beings. We've unlearned a number of things with regard to, and I see it now starting to come back, how to do engineering using plants, using soil, and not just concrete all the time. So you can actually create retaining walls with the vetiver, for example. There's plants. There's so many things that we have unlearned that we now are trying to relearn, and that's what CEAL Green is about. We're helping engineer resilient solutions for our climate pressures that we now face. And the Caribbean, the people of the Caribbean, we're at the forefront of the consequences because we're island nations, right? The consequences of climate change are real. And so I don't particularly like the word climate change. People utilize that word because climate change happens all the time. The climate changes, the world changes, it's an agile, dynamic thing. However, the way that we have built infrastructure for the past 50 to 100 years is no longer applicable to the climate pressures that we're facing as the world changes. And so now that's why I'm here. That's how we're tying back my desire to become an engineer with my experience as an engineer and a project manager and a project executive to now trying to change the way that we engineer solutions, infrastructure solutions that are specific for Trinidad and Tobago rather than relying on cookie cutter solutions from developed countries.
Well, we have to do it one city at a time. I remember my dad was once the mayor of the capital city.
Yes.
And I suggested to him, why not get everybody to put plants in front of their building to deal with carbon monoxide? Why not get them to grow on their roofs alongside the solar panels? Why aren't we trying to get, the fastest way to get the change is through the businesses. Yes. And why aren't we trying to do it? Now, I know he went and council and all the bureaucracy involved in all those things, but it did not come to fruition. Mm-hmm. And I always marveled that at Synergy, Mr. Chinley's mother put those big pots and she left it out there, even during carnivals, as her part of the green process. I don't see them today. And maybe she's no longer maintaining them, maybe she's reaching age. But it starts with the little things, as you indicated, us understanding that we have to be responsible for the future generations. It's not one generation over. We often have to look at things 5 generations forward, and what are they getting? And I mean, I don't, we could talk it at another time, but the politics aside, the colors aside, it's about a nation building itself and growing out of it. Yeah. And I hope those watching understand the importance of these conversations that we're having. So what else do you do? Is it CEAL? How do you pronounce?
CEAL, Consulting Engineers Associates Limited, CEAL. So we call it CEAL and CEAL Green. We're now a group of companies focused on infrastructure, civils, and sustainable.
And I know you called Vaughan Lazama, who is the APET guy. I remember well.
He was the president of APET, but now he's the registrar of the Board of Engineering. I am now, in fact, the vice president of APET, the Association of Professional Engineers of Trinidad and Tobago. And yeah, we really believe in putting it out there that engineers can help you solve these solutions, these problems that we face. And we all have to work together. We have to realize that it's about our survival here in the Caribbean. And we need to put aside the pettiness. Spending money on wars to kill each other is anti what we should be doing. It's against what we should be doing is working together, one person at a time, one group at a time, one organization at a time, to help us first relearn, become more aware of what are the changes that we can make as individuals, as families, as groups about towards the energy transformation, towards reducing our carbon footprints, our impacts on the world, and changing the ways that we think about how we travel, for example. You just talked about one of them. One thing that we can think about is, you see it when you go away, people movers. We can all start, in Trinidad and Tobago, everybody has a car, 3 cars, 4 cars, 5 cars in one house. We can all commute together, and that reduces your impact significantly. So simple things like that, transport, how we work together to innovate and change our mindsets in terms of transportation, in terms of how we work together, the temperatures which our rooms are at. We can do that together, but it's just about awareness. And I feel quite confident still, even with the negatives, that the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the people of the Caribbean, can become more aware and can shift their behaviors towards the positive.
Well, you say that, but I look at the primary and secondary schools today, and they all have air conditions. Yeah. We grew up drinking water from the tap, hot environments, accustomed, going home sweaty, parents accepting that as the norm. Yeah. And then even doing our homework and going out and play again. Yeah. The status quo has changed. Yeah. Or maybe the goalpost has moved. But I wanted to change topics a bit. You did 20 years of corporate. Yeah. And then you've come now you've gone from full, fast-paced 45-hour weeks to now maybe still at 45-hour weeks, but within your control.
Right.
More access to family, more access to life, to training. You and I recently met in a continuous learning environment. Yeah. We're doing those same kind of things. How has it been to change? Because I know you've been in that fast world since high school. Yeah. How has the change been?
It's still a struggle to change from you have a procurement officer, you have an admin, you have secretary, you have people who drive you to various locations. And now I am the bottle washer, cook, security guard. And so in terms of managing time, it remains a struggle because everything now is accountable on me, whereas we could share the load in corporate. So that is all about time management. So learning how to deal with time, how to communicate to employees, how to find cash flow every month to pay salaries. That's the challenge that I continue to face here and grow through. But I think the reward is so significant, as you say. I'm able to spend that time with the family. I'm able to work at night if I have to make up. But I can prioritize the things that I want to prioritize as a business owner. And that's another thing that I encourage people, parents that are looking out there, think about how you can regain your own time. Think about how you can not just earn your salary or earn your dollar, but think about how you can earn multiple sources of revenue. Think about, especially now, as you talked about with AI, I had to go to a building and look through books to try to figure out how to get my way to Atlanta, for example, or how to get a scholarship. Now you just go onto ChatGPT, Claude, ask it. It tells you step by step what to do. It's much easier. So I would implore people to go out there, look for the opportunities, because the world is now at your fingertips. And there's so many more opportunities that are available to anybody from any part of Trinidad and Tobago.
I had to chuckle because I remember in university, if you really wanted to go from point A to point B, you had to go on MapQuest.
Yeah.
They don't know about the dial-up songs of the modems. And you had to print out your MapQuest or write it out. Yeah. And if you miss your exit, you have to circle back around.
That happened to me. My first internship that I got was from Morehouse and to BP. I had to drive from Atlanta to Texas. Oh. And so I printed out the same thing on MapQuest, and I missed my turn at 11 p.m. at night in the middle of, I think I was in Mississippi at the time. So, it's, thinking about Mississippi, driving at night, 11 p.m. and having to recircle, my mother was like, don't ever do this again. But I have done many things like that over and over again, yeah.
What are the lessons you're getting now out of CEAL that you want to project forward to others? If you could tell people, what are the top 5 things? You started by saying long nights, but more access to family.
Yes.
What else would you say?
I think it's really about growth, of seeing people grow. I think I still consider myself young, but then I see young employees coming in, young interns coming into the organization, CEAL, and then I'm like, I'm not young. These are young people, and seeing the decisions that they have to make and being able to impart information to them and being patient about it. Because at times I'm like, why would you make that decision in my head? But then it's how do I have to think, sit back and say, okay, this person isn't yet at that point. Let me try to coax them or just show them how to make a decision on their own, not tell them what to do. So that's something that I have learned and I continue to get better at, because you have to allow people the decisions, for them to make the decisions. And so I give them some level of information and allow them to make their final choice. That's a good learning for me, especially for the young engineers who come into my organization. The third thing I think is that working in corporate, working globally, and coming back to Trinidad and Tobago, we move too slowly in Trinidad. Things are too slow. Just to get a bank account for a business, they say that it's online, but you've got to go through a number of hoops, and we are slowing down the rate of business and the rate of adding value to Trinidad and Tobago when all of the technology is available to reduce and minimize these, right? So that's number 3. That's the rate of pace of business and maybe even the ease of doing business. Another one is access to capital, right? Access to capital from a banking perspective. We need, entrepreneurs especially, need to have access to some sort of VC. I know there's things like planting seeds and so on, but it needs to be more systematic, okay? And I think that's something that I believe needs the risk averseness that I see present here. We need to come up with a way to help that. And I think the 5th thing that I'm seeing is that really we've got Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, not just Trinidad. We've got to move towards the mindset of systems thinking in a more step-by-step approach to solve problems. Everybody, a lot of people, you said it earlier, somebody have to change this. The government had to do this. No, you can make change where you are. Just as CEAL is making changes where we are, because we're developing systems, we're using AI, we're using technology to develop the systems specifically for us. Figure out what your processes are and sit down and develop your workflow. How do I get new clients? How do I build trust with clients? How do I build my plan to respond to RFPs? And then how do I ensure that I deliver a quality product to the client?
Or service.
or service, product or well, in my case, yes, definitely service. And when you build that out, then you build the systems for your company that allows you to deliver that product or service with excellence. And I think that I see many times people here in the Caribbean, yeah, man, or they say, we know what to do. Oh, yeah, we'll do it. And then they don't do it. They don't follow through. The systems are not in place. And I think that if you can teach your children from as early as possible, even 8, 9, 10, but definitely in the teens, how to think in a systematic way, I think that will help people in general go a very long way.
Last point. What is the motto of CEAL?
Oh, well, we have two things. We have our mission and we have our values. The mission, our vision, I should say, our vision is to deliver the projects that are innovative and move the dial towards addressing the green gap, where we don't, people, again, in your case, you want to put solar panels on your house or in your commercial business, but you don't know where to begin. And we're here to help you solve that problem. That's one. And our core values are we are driven, discipline, respect, integrity, we add value, and we're focused on engineering and net zero or neutrality. That's what we are, that's what we stand for, and we believe that we can do that not only here in Trinidad and Tobago, but across the Caribbean.
Folks, you've been listening to my twin. CEAL, a phenomenal business model, well articulated, well thought out. It's a group of companies, a group of engineering minds of varying skill sets coming together to help you. You can't ask for it better than this. And so I want to thank you for being here with me. I want to continue in another episode wearing your APET hat.
All right.
Because APET as an association is a very crucial tenet towards not even just the macroeconomy, but the microeconomy of TNT and probably the Caribbean.
Yes.
And so we'll take it up part 2, talking APET next. Folks, this has been the 868. I am your host, Daren Lee Sing. Thank you, Brother Roper, for joining me. And as I always end, the only way to the other side is through.